The Grand Archive of Andrakar hummed with the quiet industry of scholars. Lieutenant Arya Voss ran her slender fingers along the spines of ancient texts, pausing at a slim volume with faded lettering. Earth Legends, a collection of pre-cosmic folklore. Glancing around to ensure she was alone, she slipped the book into her satchel. It wasn't forbidden reading, precisely just embarrassing, like collecting children's fairy tales at her age and rank. The Andrakar cluster had long considered humans a figment of imagination, colorful myths from the early days of space exploration. Markets across the 12 core worlds sold authentic human artifacts to tourists, crude imitations of items described in old texts, manufactured with deliberate imperfections to seem genuine. Children played humans and starships, a game where the imaginary creatures inevitably lost to superior Andrakarian technology. Arya's quarters in the archive's residential wing were modest, but private, a luxury afforded to senior researchers. She placed the stolen book alongside dozens of others on her makeshift shelf of human evidence. Star charts, transmission logs, debris analyses, and eyewitness accounts from the outer rim. Separately, each item seemed inconclusive. Together, they formed a constellation of possibility that consumed her waking thoughts. A holographic portrait of her father, Lieutenant Commander Jasper Voss, watched from her desk. 10 years since his research vessel disappeared, investigating anomalous signals at the border. 10 years of colleagues whispering that he'd chased ghosts into the void. 10 years of Arya determined to prove them wrong. "I'm getting closer, Father," she whispered, activating her private terminal. The screen illuminated with classified reports. She'd compiled unexplained energy signatures, phantom echoes in communication relays, microscopic material compositions, inconsistent with known races. Small pieces of a puzzle the Andrakar Federation refused to acknowledge might exist. Arya's communication panel chimed. "Lieutenant Voss," came the crisp voice of Archive Director Thalen. "Your presence is requested in Briefing Chamber Alpha, immediately." Her heart quickened. Alpha chambers were reserved for military matters, not academic discussions. "Acknowledged Director, may I ask the nature of—" "No, Lieutenant, you may not." The connection severed. 30 minutes later, Arya stood rigid before a semicircle of stern faces. Archive Director Thalen, 2 Federation admirals she didn't recognize, and Captain Zevi of the survey frigate Astraeus. "Lieutenant," began Thalen without preamble, "Captain Zevi has encountered something at the outer rim that falls within your specialized knowledge." Captain Zevi stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "Survey frigate Astraeus routine patrol along the Casparian belt. 18 standard hours ago, our sensors detected these." The display showed clustered objects, angular, purposeful shapes with clean lines, unlike the organic designs favored by known species. "We observed unusual emission patterns," continued Zevi, her voice steady, but eyes betraying unease. "Then this came through our communications array," she gestured, and a sound filled the chamber. Static crackled then. "Andrakar Federation, we return. UNSF resolution. Diplomatic." The transmission faded, but its impact reverberated through Arya's body. The language was unmistakable, Old Earth English, precise and fluent. Not the broken fragments sometimes found in ancient debris, but living speech. "The transmission contains linguistic patterns matching what you classify as human language," said Admiral Karek, a grizzled veteran with cybernetic implants framing his left eye. His tone made clear his skepticism. "Since you've made yourself our foremost authority on these myths, we require your assessment." Arya swallowed hard. "Sir, this matches consistent patterns in accounts I've studied. The use of UNSF, United Nations Space Force, appears in multiple historical references, and the ship designation Resolution follows human naming conventions." "Convenient," sneered Karek. "Or someone with access to the same folklore is playing an elaborate prank." "With all respect, Admiral," Arya countered, "creating vessels of that configuration Generating those emission signatures and broadcasting in perfect Old Earth English would require resources beyond any prankster. "What would you propose, Lieutenant?" asked the Second Admiral Leyrek, whose reputation for thoughtful strategy preceded him. "Send me," Arya said without hesitation. "Aboard the next vessel dispatched to investigate. If these are truly humans, or something masquerading as them, my research makes me uniquely qualified to assess the situation." Carrick laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "Send our resident conspiracy theorist as our diplomatic envoy. Might as well transmit our surrender immediately." Director Thalen raised a hand. "The lieutenant isn't proposing to represent the Federation, merely to observe and analyze." He turned to Arya with calculating eyes. "However, this indulgence of your theories has limits. If this proves to be a hoax or misinterpretation, your research privileges will be permanently revoked." Arya maintained her composure, despite the threat to her life's work. "Understood, Director." 2 days later, news of the border anomaly had leaked to the public networks. Arya couldn't walk through the archive without enduring snickers and mocking whispers. A popular entertainment channel ran a segment titled "Humans Among Us," featuring actors in ridiculous costumes based on exaggerated descriptions from children's tales. Memes spread across the information networks showing tiny cartoonish humans punching massive Andrakarian starships. Arya forced herself to ignore the ridicule as she prepared for the mission. The light cruiser Celestial Warden would depart for the border in 6 hours, enough time for her to copy her research to portable drives and pack essential equipment. Her private terminal chimed with an incoming message, anonymous source, high encryption. She hesitated before opening it. "Lieutenant Voss," read the message, "your father was not chasing phantoms. Proceed with caution. They remember what we made ourselves forget." It was signed simply, "A Friend of Truth." Arya stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the controls. She saved the message to her secure archive, then methodically erased all traces of its arrival from the system logs. Someone else believed. Someone with access to military-grade encryption. She wasn't alone. The Celestial Warden slipped into hyperspace with minimal ceremony. Captain Naira Vek, a veteran of border conflicts, had made her disdain for the mission clear at the pre-departure briefing. "We're wasting valuable resources chasing sensor ghosts and garbled transmissions," she had announced to her crew. "But orders are orders. 3 standard days to confirm there's nothing there, then back to meaningful duties." Arya spent most of those 3 days in her assigned quarters reviewing her research and preparing possible first contact protocols based on historical accounts. On the final approach to the coordinates, Captain Vek summoned her to the bridge. "Lieutenant Voss," Vek said, without looking up from her command console, "we're approaching the anomaly site. Try not to faint when your myths fail to materialize." A low chuckle rippled through the bridge crew, silenced only when Communications Officer Ilara Tin straightened suddenly at her station. "Captain," she said, her voice tight, "I'm receiving a transmission. Same frequency as the Astreus report." Vek nodded curtly. "Put it through. Let's hear these humans speak." The bridge speakers crackled briefly, then filled with a deep, resonant voice, speaking flawless, Old Earth English. "Andrakarian vessel Celestial Warden. This is Commander Elena Hartman of the United Nations. Space Force Flagship Resolution. We recognize your approach as investigative rather than hostile. We invite communication." Silence fell across the bridge. The communications officer looked to her captain, who seemed momentarily frozen. Arya stepped forward. "Captain, they know our vessel designation. That information isn't publicly broadcasted." Vek recovered her composure and nodded sharply to Ilara Tin. "Response frequency open." Before Vek could speak, the voice continued. "We specifically request communication with Lieutenant Arya Voss, Xenohistorian, of the Andrakar Archive, daughter of Lieutenant Commander Jasper Voss. We believe she seeks truth where others prefer comfortable myths." The bridge crew turned as one to stare at Arya, whose hands gripped the nearest console for support. They knew her, They knew her father. This was no coincidence, no prank, no sensor malfunction. Captain Vek's face hardened. "Lieutenant, what is the meaning of this?" "I don't know, Captain," Arya answered honestly. "But I intend to find out." Whatever Vek might have said next was forgotten, as the tactical officer called out, "Captain, spatial distortion directly ahead." The view screen showed emptiness, then reality seemed to fold. Where nothing had been, a massive vessel materialized. Its black hull absorbed light, rather than reflected it, making its true dimensions difficult to gauge. Veins of cerulean energy pulsed across its surface in geometric patterns. On its forward section, illuminated characters spelled out UNSF Resolution. Above, an emblem of Earth, not the stylized caricature from Andrakarian children's books, but a detailed rendering of blue oceans and green-brown continents. "Weapon status," Vek demanded, her voice admirably steady. "All systems operational, Captain, but—" The tactical officer frowned at his console. "They're making no attempt to shield their vital systems. Either their technology is incomprehensibly different from ours, or they don't consider us a threat," Vek finished grimly. The voice of Commander Hartman returned. "We come in peace, Celestial Warden. If we wished hostility, you would not see us until it was too late. Lieutenant Voss, we await your response." Vek turned to Arya, her previous mockery replaced by grim calculation. "It seems your expertise is required after all, Lieutenant. What do you recommend?" Arya straightened her shoulders. Years of ridicule, of careful research, of defending her father's memory, all had led to this moment. "Open a direct channel," she said. "I'll speak with them." When the channel opened, Arya spoke clearly, despite her racing heart. "This is Lieutenant Arya Voss of the Andrakar Archive. I recognize your designation as human. If that's correct, you represent a people long considered mythological in our records." "Yes, Lieutenant," came the immediate reply. "Myths are often what powerful institutions make of inconvenient truths. We've monitored your research efforts with interest. Your father came closer than anyone in generations to rediscovering us. His work did not die with him." Arya felt her throat tighten. "My father, is he—" "He is not with us, Lieutenant, but his legacy is. We invite you aboard the Resolution to continue the conversation he began. You may bring 2 colleagues of your choosing as witnesses and security." Captain Vek stepped forward. "Absolutely not. No Federation officer will board an unverified vessel without proper diplomatic—" The view screen changed, showing a woman in a blue-black uniform, with silver insignia, Commander Elena Hartman, presumably. Her features were striking dark skin, close-cropped silver hair, eyes so deep brown they appeared black. "Captain Vek," she said, "I understand your concerns, but consider that we've had the capability to destroy your vessel since the moment of our appearance. Yet here, we are exchanging words instead of weapons. Lieutenant Voss will be perfectly safe." Vek turned to Arya, conflict evident in her expression. "This is beyond my authority. I need to contact command." "By all means," Hartman replied. "We'll maintain position and await your decision. Lieutenant Voss knows how to reach us when you're ready." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. 3 hours later, after furious communication with Federation Command, Arya found herself aboard a shuttle with Captain Vek and Security Chief Terran Lox. The captain had insisted on accompanying Arya herself, partly from duty, and partly, Arya suspected, from curiosity. As they approached the Resolution, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. It dwarfed the Celestial Warden, stretching at least 2 kilometers from bow to stern. No visible weapons disrupted its sleek lines, yet Arya sensed immense power contained within its structure. "Remember," Vek instructed, as they prepared to dock, "we reveal nothing about Federation defenses or diplomacy. We are here to listen and observe only." The docking procedure completed with surprising compatibility, the Resolution systems seamlessly interfacing with their shuttle. The airlock cycled, and they stepped through into the human vessel. The interior was not what Arya had expected. Instead of the cold, utilitarian design of Androcarian military vessels, the corridor featured warm lighting and walls of a material resembling polished wood. The air carried subtle fragrances, something floral and earthy that Arya couldn't identify. Commander Hartman waited to greet them, flanked by two officers. In person, she radiated a calm authority that even Captain Vec seemed to respond to unconsciously, straightening her posture. "Welcome aboard the Resolution," Hartman said. "Lieutenant Voss, Captain Vec's Security Chief Locks. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that curved gently, rather than meeting at sharp angles. Crew members passed by, nodding respectfully, but showing no surprise at the aliens in their midst. Arya noted the diversity in their appearances, variations in skin tone, facial features, and body types, far greater than among Androcarians, whose evolutionary path had favored uniformity. Hartman led them to a chamber she called the Legacy Hall. As the doors slid open, Arya gasped involuntarily. The circular room's walls were actually transparent displays, showing Earth from orbit, blue oceans, swirling white clouds, green and brown landmasses. The image was so detailed, so vibrant, it couldn't possibly be a recreation from ancient texts. "This is Earth," Hartman said simply. "Our homeworld as it appears today. Not the barren rock your historians claim, not the mythical paradise of your children's stories. A living planet with 8 billion human inhabitants." "Impossible," muttered Vec. "Our deep space surveys would have detected—" "Your surveys found exactly what we wanted them to find," Hartman interrupted. "Or more precisely, didn't find what we didn't want discovered." She gestured, and the room's central area illuminated with a holographic display, a galactic map with thousands of points of light. "The Helix Nebula, where your scientists believe stellar radiation makes habitation impossible. Behind it, shielded from detection, is our primary colonial cluster. 53 worlds, 16 orbital habitats, and 400 million human citizens." Arya found her voice. "Why hide? Why allow yourselves to become myths?" Hartman's expression darkened. "That wasn't our choice, Lieutenant. Please be seated. The story requires some explanation." They sat at a circular table that rose from the floor. Hartman touched a control, and the room's displays changed to show historical images, cities with soaring towers, vast transportation networks, humans in varied clothing and settings. 300 years ago, humanity was expanding through this sector. We encountered the early Androcar settlements and established diplomatic relations. Trade flourished. Cultural exchange began. For 50 years, we were allies and friends. The images shifted to show formal meetings between humans, and early Androcarians document signings, mixed crews on vessels. Then came the Shatterpoint crisis. A miscommunication led to conflict over resources in the Cygnus Reach. Mistakes were made on both sides. But what should have been a minor diplomatic incident was manipulated by certain factions within the early Federation. Now the images showed protests, burning buildings, propaganda posters depicting humans as monsters. The Androcar purge began slowly. Human citizens living in Federation space disappeared. Records were altered. Within a generation, new Androcarian children were taught that humans were myths, cautionary tales about greed and violence. Hartman's voice remained controlled, but Arya could sense the pain beneath. "We didn't have the military strength to challenge the rising Federation directly. So we made a strategic decision. We withdrew. We concealed our worlds. We let ourselves become legends while we observed, built strength, and waited." "Waited for what?" Vec asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the right moment to reclaim our place in galactic history," Hartman answered. "That moment has come." This is unbelievable," Vec said, rising from her seat. "You're claiming a conspiracy spanning centuries. The resources required, the coordination—" "Your own archives contain the evidence," Hartman said. "Though accessing it requires persistence, as Lieutenant Voss discovered. We've been monitoring her research for years. When she began following her father's path, too closely, reaching conclusions that might expose the truth prematurely. Certain elements within your government arranged his disappearance. Arya felt as though the air had been sucked from her lungs. My father was silenced by our own government. By a faction within it, dedicated to maintaining the fiction, Hartman clarified. The majority of your citizens and officials genuinely believe we're myths. The conspiracy required fewer participants as generations passed, and the original manipulations became accepted history. Security Chief Locks, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. Why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue hiding? Hartman's gaze shifted to him. Because the faction that orchestrated our erasure is gaining influence again. Because they've begun military expeditions that threaten our concealed territories. And because it's time for your people to face the truth, no civilization can build its future on deliberate lies about its past. Back on the Celestial Warden, Captain Vec secluded herself in her quarters to compose her report to Federation Command. Arya sat in her own assigned space mind, reeling from the revelations. Hartman had provided her with a data crystal containing historical documents, unaltered records of human Androcarian relations, and disturbing evidence of the systematic erasure of human existence from official history. If authentic, and Arya's instincts told her, these records would shake the Federation to its foundations. Entire academic disciplines were built on falsified anthropological and historical premises. Political structures justified themselves through mythologies about Androcarian exceptionalism that denied the contributions of other species, particularly humans. Her door chimed and Security Chief Locks entered without waiting for permission. "Lieutenant," he said in a low voice, "I need to speak with you privately." Arya tensed, suddenly aware of how isolated she was. If the conspiracy Hartman described had indeed silenced her father, might Locks be an agent of the same faction? He seemed to read her thoughts. "I'm not here to harm you. Quite the opposite." He produced a small disk from his pocket and activated it. A field of static enveloped them, a privacy shield military grade. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room." Arya nodded cautiously. "I served with your father," Locke said, simply. "On his final mission. I was junior security on the Horizon Seeker. Official records say I was reassigned before that mission, but that's false. I was there when we encountered the human scout ship. I was there when Federation Special Division vessels appeared from hyperspace and opened fire not on the humans who escaped, but on us. They couldn't risk witnesses." "How did you survive?" Arya whispered. "Escape pod, officially listed as destroyed. I've been working under an altered identity since, watching for any sign the truth might emerge." He gestured to the data crystal on Arya's desk. "Is that what I think it is? Evidence, history, truth." Lox's expression hardened. "Then we need to protect it, and you. Captain Vec is honorable, but she's also a career officer. She'll follow Command's directives, whatever they are." "What do you suggest?" "The humans offered you sanctuary, didn't they? When no one else was listening." Arya nodded slowly. "Commander Hartman said I'd be welcome aboard the Resolution if I felt unsafe. You should consider it, at least until—" The ship's alarms blared, suddenly cutting him off. The intercom activated with Captain Vec's voice. "All hands to battle stations. Lieutenant Voss to the bridge immediately." When Arya arrived at the bridge, the view screen showed chaos. 5 Androcarian warships had appeared in the sector, heavy destroyers, their weapon systems fully powered. The Resolution maintained its position, making no aggressive moves, but radiating a readiness that suggested immense restrained power. "What's happening?" Arya asked as she took her station. "Admiral Karek has arrived with the 3rd Border Fleet," Vec said tightly. "He's ordered us to withdraw, and is preparing to engage the human vessel." "That's madness," Arya protested. "They've made no aggressive moves. This is a diplomatic situation, not a military one." "Those are his orders." Vec's expression revealed her own misgivings. "And we're bound to follow chain of command." The communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the Resolution captain." On screen, Commander Hartman appeared, her calm demeanor unchanged, despite the weapons trained on her vessel. Captain Vec, I see Admiral Karek has decided on a show of force rather than dialogue. Predictable but disappointing. Please be advised that while we have no desire for conflict, we will defend ourselves if necessary. The Federation doesn't negotiate with threats to its borders, Vec replied, though Arya noted she avoided the dismissive tone Karek might have used. We aren't a threat unless made one, Hartman countered. I ask you to reconsider this course, for the sake of both our peoples. Vec hesitated. I have my orders, Commander. As do I. Hartman's image vanished. Tactical Officer Marin called out, Captain, the Resolution is powering up some kind of energy field. Configuration unknown. On the view screen, veins of blue light pulsed more rapidly across the Resolution's hull. A barely visible shimmer surrounded the massive ship, like heat rising from desert sand. Admiral Karek's flagship, the Indomitable, moved into firing position. All vessels, came Karek's voice over the command channel. Target the alien vessel's propulsion systems and fire on my mark. Arya watched in horror as the Andrakarian warships locked weapons on the Resolution. She turned to Vec, desperate. Captain, please. This isn't right. We need to... Mark Karek's command rang out. 5 Andrakarian vessels fired simultaneously, energy lances and fusion torpedoes streaking toward the Resolution. Arya held her breath, waiting for the inevitable explosions, the beginning of a war that should never happen. The weapons vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply gone the instant they touched the shimmering field surrounding the human vessel. No debris, no energy discharge, just absence. Stunned silence filled the Celestial Warden's bridge. On the command channel, Karek's voice rasped, all vessels full barrage, fire everything. A second wave of weapons fire, more intense, more varied, raced toward the Resolution. Again, each projectile and energy beam simply ceased to exist upon contact with the field. The Resolution remained motionless, making no move to return fire. Then a curious thing happened. One by one, the Andrakarian warship's weapon systems went dark. Engineering alarms blared across the fleet, as propulsion systems followed power levels, dropping to minimal life support. Only the Celestial Warden remained unaffected. What's happening? Vec demanded of her tactical officer. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse. Unknown, Captain. The other vessels report all systems failing simultaneously. No damage, just shutdown. As if someone threw a master switch. Commander Hartman's image reappeared on the view screen. A demonstration, Captain Vec, not an attack. Your vessels are unharmed. Systems will restore themselves in approximately 1 hour. Just long enough for cooler heads to prevail. Admiral Karek's voice bellowed over the emergency channel. Celestial Warden. Why are you unaffected? Have you collaborated with the enemy? Vec looked at Arya, then at her crew, before responding. No, Admiral. I believe we were spared because we engaged in dialogue, rather than immediate aggression. Hartman nodded approvingly. Precisely, Captain. Now perhaps we can resume diplomatic discussions without the theatrics. The next 12 hours unfolded with dizzying speed. With the Andrakarian warships temporarily disabled, a reluctant Admiral Karek had no choice but to engage in negotiations. The Federation Council convened an emergency session with Arya, providing testimony alongside the data from the Resolution. The reaction across the Andrakar cluster was explosive. Information networks overloaded as citizens shared and debated the revelations. Cultural commentators spoke of cosmic gaslighting. Historians and academics divided into factions, those embracing the new evidence versus those denouncing it as elaborate fakery. As Arya had predicted, the implications reached far beyond historical curiosity. If humans existed, if they had been systematically erased from Andrakarian history, what did that say about the Federation's founding principles, about its claims to moral authority in the galactic community? Political opportunists of all stripes scrambled to position themselves. Some called for immediate reparations and alliance with the returned humans. Others demanded resistance against what they characterized as an existential threat to Androcarian identity. The more moderate voices called for careful evaluation of the evidence and measured diplomatic response. Through it all, the Resolution and 3 additional human vessels that had decloaked maintained their position at the border. They made no aggressive moves, demanded no territory issued, no ultimatums. Their presence alone was message enough. We are real. We have always been real. Deal with this truth. 5 days after first contact, Arya stood in her quarters aboard the Celestial Warden, preparing for an unprecedented mission. The Federation Council, after heated debate, had appointed her to lead a delegation to Earth itself, to see the human homeworld with Androcarian eyes, and report back without intermediaries or interpreters. A soft chime announced a visitor. Admiral Lyrek, the more thoughtful of the 2 admirals from her initial briefing, entered with a solemn expression. "Lieutenant Voss," he said, "I wanted to speak with you before your departure." "Admiral," she acknowledged, continuing to pack her equipment. "Your father would be proud," he said unexpectedly. "He believed when no one else did. Even I thought him overzealous in his pursuit of those signals." Arya paused. "Did you know what happened to him, to the Horizon Seeker?" Lyrek's expression clouded. "Not at the time. I've spent the past 5 days reviewing classified archives with new eyes. What I found," he sighed heavily. "Some elements within our military and intelligence services have much to answer for. The special faction responsible has operated with dangerous autonomy for generations. Will they be held accountable? Justice takes many forms, Lieutenant. The truth you've helped reveal may be the most powerful form." Arya considered this. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're about to embark on a historic journey, and you deserve to know that not all of us were complicit in the deception. Some of us simply failed to question deeply enough." He extended his hand, offering a small metallic object. "This belonged to your father. It was recovered after the incident. I thought you should have it." Arya accepted it, a data storage device of older design, heavily damaged. "Can it be accessed?" "Unknown. But if anyone deserves to try, it's you." Lyrek straightened. "Safe journey, Lieutenant. Remember, you carry the hopes of many with you." After he departed, Arya carefully placed the device among her belongings. Whatever secrets it might contain would wait. First, she had a homeworld to visit, a planet relegated to myth that now demanded recognition. The journey to Earth aboard the Resolution revealed a side of humanity Arya hadn't anticipated. Commander Hartman assigned Lieutenant Davi Santos as her guide, a cultural anthropologist specializing in Androcarian society. Where Arya had expected bitterness or triumphalism, Santos displayed genuine excitement about the cultural exchange. "My entire professional life has been spent studying your people from afar," Santos explained, as they toured the Resolution's botanical gardens, a lush space filled with Earth flora that captivated Arya with its diversity. "Actually, speaking with an Androcarian scholar is, well, it's the highlight of my career." "Even though my people tried to erase yours from history?" Arya asked. Santos considered this. "Most of your people never knew we existed. Those who perpetrated the erasure were relatively few. We've always distinguished between the architects of injustice and those who inherited their constructs." The observation struck Arya deeply. In the days that followed, she had similar encounters throughout the ship. Human crew members approached her with curiosity rather than hostility. They asked about Androcarian art, philosophy, cuisine, genuine cultural exchanges, rather than political posturing. "How can they be so generous?" she asked Hartman during one of their evening briefings. "After centuries of denial." Hartman's expression softened slightly. "Don't mistake philosophical perspective for absence of pain, Lieutenant. We've had generations to process the injustice, to decide how we would respond when the time came. Vengeance offers momentary satisfaction but poisons the future. We chose differently." The first sight of Earth from the Resolution's observation deck left Arya speechless. The images she'd seen couldn't capture the living presence of the planet, the swirl of clouds, the ever-changing patterns of light as continents moved from day to night, the sheer vibrant energy of a world teeming with life. 8 billion humans, she whispered. All this time. Right here. And billions more across our colonial settlements, Santos added. The official story in your histories that Earth was rendered uninhabitable by war or environmental collapse provided convenient explanation for our absence. How did you conceal a planet? One of the Andrikarian scientists in her delegation asked. Santos smiled. Perception filters are more effective than physical barriers. Your survey ships and probes did detect Earth, but the data was subtly altered before reaching conscious analysis. A sophisticated compromise between our quantum entanglement specialists and your own officials who wished us forgotten. The landing, in what humans called Geneva, overwhelmed Arya's senses. The architecture blended sleek, modern designs with preserved historical structures, centuries old. Vegetation integrated with urban spaces in ways Andrikarian cities never attempted. The humans themselves move through their environment with comfortable familiarity, an ancient species at home on their ancestral world. A formal reception awaited them representatives from Earth's United Government academic institutions and cultural organizations. Where Andrikarian formal events favored rigid protocol and hierarchical interactions, the humans created a more fluid environment. Officials mingled freely with artists and scholars. Conversation flowed naturally between serious diplomatic discussions and personal exchanges. It's too much, confessed Naren Kelv, one of the Andrikarian anthropologists in Arya's delegation. All our models of human social structure were theoretical constructs based on fragments. The reality is overwhelmingly complex. That's precisely what they want you to feel, remarked Ralin Zul, the naval captain assigned as military observer. Unlike most of the delegation, Captain Zul maintained a skeptical distance from their hosts. Cognitive overload serves strategic purposes. While we're dazzled by their planet, their true intentions remain obscured. Their intention seems to be recognition, Arya countered. They could have destroyed our fleet 5 days ago. Instead, they temporarily disabled our weapons and invited dialogue. A show of superior technology, Shul persisted. Demonstrating they could annihilate us at will, making actual annihilation unnecessary. Psychological warfare, at its most refined. Arya considered this perspective. Perhaps. But if their goal is psychological dominance, why invite us here? Why show us their homeworld, their people, their art, and music and history? There are more direct ways to establish dominance. Zul had no immediate answer. On the third day of their visit, as the delegation toured what humans called a university, a sprawling campus of learning centers, Arya's communication device chimed with an encrypted alert. Director Thalen from the archive, requesting immediate conference. She excused herself and found a private alcove to accept the transmission. Thalen's holographic form appeared, his expression grave. Lieutenant, developments here require your attention. Admiral Carrick has mobilized the home fleet. He's presenting evidence that the humans are preparing a full-scale invasion of Andrikarian space. Arya felt cold dread settle in her stomach. What evidence? Sensor readings showing increased activity in the Helix Nebula. Communications intercepts suggesting military preparations. It's compelling, at least to those already inclined toward conflict. It's manufactured, Arya stated flatly. I've seen nothing here indicating hostile intent. Quite the opposite. Thalen's expression revealed his own doubts. The Council is divided. Moderate voices argue for continued diplomatic engagement, but war fever is spreading. The Admiral's faction is using public fear to advance an aggressive response. What would you have me do? Return immediately with your assessment. Your first-hand observations may be the only counterweight to Carrick's influence. Thalen paused. Lieutenant, rumor has it, you've been given access to Earth's historical archives regarding the original erasure. Yes. I've been collecting evidence of the conspiracy, including identifying those initially responsible. Bring everything you can, names particularly. If we can demonstrate that current officials are descendants of those who orchestrated the original deception, it would shift the political landscape significantly. As the transmission ended, Arya leaned against the wall, mind racing. She needed to inform Commander Hartman of these developments. If Karek was indeed pushing for war, the humans needed to be prepared for potential aggression. She found Hartman in conversation with several Earth officials in a garden courtyard. The commander excused herself immediately upon seeing Arya's expression. "What's happened?" she asked directly. Arya explained the situation rapidly, concluding with, "If Karek succeeds in building sufficient support, he could launch attacks before diplomacy has a chance to work. I need to return to present counter-evidence." Hartman nodded grimly. "Not unexpected. There are always those who prefer familiar conflict to uncomfortable truth." She activated her communication device. "Resolution, prepare for immediate departure. Priority mission." "You're taking your flagship back to Andrakarian space?" Arya asked. "Won't that appear provocative?" "Diplomatic transport is necessary, but more importantly, we've received intelligence about factions within your military who might attempt to prevent your return. The resolution can ensure your delegation arrives safely." Within hours, they were boarding the massive human vessel. Most of the Andrakarian delegation seemed relieved to be returning home early, but Captain Schul watched the proceedings with transparent suspicion. "Convenient timing," he remarked to Arya as they prepared for departure. "Crisis erupts requiring our hasty removal from Earth before completing our observations." "The crisis is real, Captain," Arya replied evenly, "and our observations thus far should be sufficient to counter Karek's warmongering." Zul's expression hardened. Warmongering. An interesting characterization of defensive preparation against a species that appeared on our borders with technology that neutralized our weapons with ease. "A species we erased from history," Arya countered. "A species that could have destroyed us but chose restraint." "So you claim." Zul moved closer, lowering his voice. "Your father's disappearance has clouded your judgment, Lieutenant. Personal vendetta masquerading as historical revisionism." Arya felt anger flare, but maintained her composure. "My father sought truth. I do the same. If that threatens your worldview, perhaps you should question your assumptions rather than my motives." The journey back to Andrakarian space proceeded with tense efficiency. Commander Hartman convened regular briefings with Arya and the senior delegates, preparing strategies for addressing the council. The human leadership had agreed to a bold move, opening all communication channels across the cluster to broadcast historical records of human-Andrakarian relations, bypassing official filters. "Won't that appear as an information attack?" asked one of the Andrakarian scientists. "Information itself is neutral," Hartman replied. "We're simply removing the barriers between your citizens and historical facts. They deserve to make informed judgments." As the resolution approached Andrakar Prime, the Federation capital long-range sensors detected substantial military activity. Dozens of warships had taken up defensive positions. Ground-based weapon platforms tracked their approach. "Lieutenant Voss to the bridge," came Hartman's voice over the intercom. When Arya arrived, the tactical display showed the Federation's massive military presence arrayed against them. A single, human vessel facing the combined might of the home fleet. "This exceeds standard defensive posture," Hartman observed. "Your Admiral Karek has been busy." "What's our approach?" Arya asked, her mouth dry with apprehension. "Direct and transparent. We'll maintain communications open on all frequencies. No stealth, no evasive maneuvers." Hartman turned to her communications officer. "Broadcast Lieutenant Voss's delegation credentials and request immediate access to the Federation Council." Before the officer could comply, Admiral Karek's image appeared on the main view screen. His expression combined triumph and barely contained hostility. "UNSF resolution, you have entered restricted space without authorization. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded." Hartman stepped forward. "Admiral Karek, we are on a diplomatic mission returning the official Andrakarian delegation from Earth. Lieutenant Voss can confirm our peaceful intent. Carrick's cybernetic eye glinted. Lieutenant Voss is no longer recognized as a Federation representative. Her delegation status has been revoked on grounds of suspected collaboration with hostile forces. Arya felt the bridge crew's eyes on her. On whose authority? She demanded. Special Directive 17 issued by the Security Council 3 hours ago. You and your colleagues will be detained upon arrival for questioning regarding potential treason. Hartman remained unperturbed. Admiral, your actions constitute a direct violation of diplomatic protocols established by your own government. The detention of officially sanctioned representatives returning from a diplomatic mission is recognized universally as an act of war. Rich accusations from invaders at our borders, Carrick sneered. We came in peace, Hartman replied. We remain committed to peace, but we will not submit to illegal detention. Then you'll submit to destruction, Carrick stated flatly. You have 1 hour to surrender before we open fire. The transmission ended. Hartman turned to Arya with a raised eyebrow. Your assessment, Lieutenant? Carrick has overreached. Special Directive 17 requires full council approval for implementation. He's acting without proper authority, likely, with support from the faction that orchestrated the original erasure. Our options? Arya considered rapidly. We need direct access to the council, bypass Carrick entirely, and we need to release the historical evidence to the public immediately. Both can be arranged. Hartman nodded to her communications officer. Begin transmission of the historical archive to all Androcarian frequencies. Prioritize evidence of the original conspiracy and documentation of peaceful human-Androcarian relations. To Arya, she added, We'll need to reach the council physically. The resolution cannot approach further without triggering wider conflict, but a smaller vessel might penetrate their defensive screen. They'll shoot down any approaching craft, Arya pointed out. Not if they can't detect it. Hartman smiled slightly. Our stealth systems aren't limited to capital ships, Lieutenant. 30 minutes later, Arya found herself aboard a small transport vessel with Commander Hartman and a minimal crew. Captain Schul had demanded to accompany them ostensibly as Federation military observer. The craft separated from the Resolution and immediately vanished from visual and sensor detection. Phase shift technology, Hartman explained, as they accelerated toward Androkar Prime. We exist slightly out of alignment with normal space-time, undetectable to conventional sensors. Impossible, Schul muttered, though his expression betrayed his fascination. Just highly improbable, Hartman corrected. Your physicists theorized similar technology 50 years ago, but abandoned research when material limitations proved insurmountable. We faced the same challenges, but persisted. Their approach to the capital proceeded without incident. The transport vessel slipped through the defensive screen like a ghost through solid walls. They landed on a government complex rooftop, chosen for its proximity to the council chambers and minimal security presence. The council is in emergency session, Arya noted, checking a public information terminal. Deliberating Admiral Carrick's request for military authorization against human aggression. Perfect timing, Hartman remarked. Nothing disrupts a war vote quite like the supposed enemy walking peacefully into your chamber. As they approached the council building, Arya activated her archive credentials. Despite Carrick's claims, the automated security systems still recognized her delegation status, allowing them passage through the initial checkpoints. Human visitors were unprecedented, but Hartman's diplomatic documentation, ancient protocols still embedded in the system, processed successfully. They encountered resistance only at the final security station before the council chambers. 2 Federation guards blocked their path, weapons raised. Lieutenant Voss, one stated, You are ordered to surrender for detention under Special Directive 17. Arya stepped forward. I am returning from an official diplomatic mission and invoke right of council address under Federation Charter Article 8. No detention order can supersede that right. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. The security system recognized her credentials, but their orders contradicted the protocols. Captain Zul surprisingly intervened. I am Captain Ralin Zul, military attaché to the Earth delegation. I will take responsibility for these individuals until the Council rules on their status. His rank and confident tone swayed the guards. They lowered their weapons slightly, though remained visibly uneasy. The Council must hear what we've discovered, Arya pressed. The future of Federation human relations depends on it. After a tense moment, the senior guard nodded reluctantly. Proceed. But we will accompany you, and any move interpreted as threatening will result in immediate neutralization. They entered the council chambers during Admiral Carrick's address. The vast circular hall housed 300 representatives from across the cluster, with Carrick standing at the central podium. His voice boomed through the space. Clear evidence of military mobilization. The human vessels possess technology that neutralized our most advanced weapon systems. Their sudden appearance after centuries of supposed non-existence can only be interpreted as a prelude to invasion. Arya stepped forward into the light, Commander Hartman beside her. The Admiral's assessment is incorrect and dangerously misleading, she announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber. All eyes turned to them. Carrick's face contorted with rage. Guards, detain these individuals immediately. Federation security moved toward them, but Council Speaker Varen Tal raised a hand. Hold. Lieutenant Voss has invoked right of address. We will hear her report. The aged statesman's eyes fixed on Hartman with undisguised curiosity. And I believe this must be our human visitor. Commander Elena Hartman, United Nations Space Force. Hartman confirmed with a respectful nod. I come in peace on behalf of Earth and all human settlements. Murmurs swept through the chamber. Many counselors stood for a better view of the legendary myth made flesh before them. Speaker Tal gestured to the central podium. Lieutenant Voss, you have the floor. Admiral Carrick, please step aside temporarily. Carrick complied with visible reluctance, his cybernetic eye locked on Arya with undisguised hostility. Arya took a deep breath and stepped to the podium. The culmination of her life's work, her father's work, hung on what happened in the next few minutes. Esteemed counselors, she began, I stand before you, having walked on Earth, the human homeworld dismissed in our histories as legend. I have spoken with human leaders, scholars, and citizens. I have examined their archives and technological achievements. 3 facts are incontrovertible. First, humanity exists and has always existed. Earth supports 8 billion human lives, with billions more across their colonial settlements. Second, humans and Androcarians engaged in peaceful, productive relations for 50 years before the events known as the Shatterpoint Crisis. Third, a faction within our early government systematically erased human existence from our records, transforming a historical people into cautionary myths. She activated the podium's display system, projecting images from Earth alongside historical documents retrieved from human archives. These aren't recreations or simulations. This is Earth today, vibrant, peaceful, advanced. These are records of joint human-Androcarian operations from our own sealed archives, authenticated by quantum signature. Arya then displayed the most damning evidence: internal communications between early Federation officials discussing the systematic erasure of human existence from Androcarian consciousness. Names appeared beside the communications ancestors of current officials, including ancestors of Admiral Carrick himself. The humans didn't vanish, she continued. We erased them. We built an empire on deliberate forgetfulness. And now they have returned not for vengeance, but for recognition. Carrick lunged forward. This is fabricated evidence, clever manipulations designed to weaken our resolve. Speaker Tal raised a hand. Admiral, you will have opportunity to respond. Lieutenant, continue. Arya nodded. The human fleet at our borders has made no aggressive moves. They have demonstrated superior technology, but used it only defensively. They could have destroyed our vessels, but chose instead to temporarily disable weapon systems without casualties. She gestured to Commander Hartman. They come seeking dialogue, not domination. They request acknowledgement of historical truth, not reparations or territory. Hartman stepped forward at Arya's gesture. The council chamber fell into deeper silence as she approached the podium, a living myth addressing those who had denied her existence. Counselors of the Andrakar Federation. Hartman began, her voice steady and clear. We understand the disorientation you must feel. Foundations of your historical understanding have been shaken. But truth, however uncomfortable, offers opportunity for genuine progress. She continued with dignity and restraint, outlining humanity's perspective on their erasure from history, their centuries of hidden observation, and their hopes for renewed, peaceful relations. No recriminations, no demands, only an extended hand of potential friendship. As Hartman spoke, Arya noticed movement at the chamber's security entrance. Additional Federation guards were arriving, taking positions around the perimeter. Admiral Carrick stood to the side, speaking urgently into a communication device. Speaker Tal noticed as well. Admiral Carrick, what is the meaning of this security buildup? Before Carrick could answer, the chamber's main display activated with an emergency transmission. Captain Vec of the Celestial Warden appeared, her expression grave. Council Speaker, forgive the interruption, but the Federation faces imminent crisis. Admiral Carrick has ordered the Home Fleet to fire upon the human vessel Resolution without Council authorization. The order was issued 12 minutes ago. Gasps and exclamations filled the chamber. Carrick stepped forward, suddenly commanding. I acted to protect the Federation from imminent threat. These humans infiltrated our capital while distracting us with their flagship. Their true intent is clear. Hartman's voice cut through the rising chaos. Speaker Tal, the Resolution will not return fire. I guarantee this. But I urge immediate countermanding of the attack order to prevent tragic and unnecessary casualties. Tal stood his ancient authority, silencing the chamber. Admiral Carrick, you have exceeded your authority. I hereby countermand all offensive operations against human vessels. He turned to the senior guard commander. Transmit emergency stand-down to all military units. Authorization Tal Prime override. Too late, Carrick smiled coldly. The attack is already underway. Special Division vessels operating under Protocol Black have moved into position. They answer only to Central Military Authority, a chain of command that bypasses civilian leadership in times of existential threat. Arya's blood ran cold. The same Special Division that destroyed the Horizon Seeker, that silenced my father and his crew to preserve your conspiracy. Necessary sacrifices, Carrick replied, without remorse. The Federation's identity required protection from uncomfortable truths. The chamber erupted in outrage. Councilors shouted accusations and demands. Hartman remained composed, activating her communication device. Resolution status report. The response came through clearly enough for all to hear. 6 Federal vessels have opened fire, Commander. Defensive fields holding, no damage, no casualties, awaiting instructions. Maintain defensive posture only, Hartman ordered. No return fire under any circumstances. The chamber's main display switched to a live feed from orbital sensors. The Resolution, surrounded by Andrakarian warships, absorbed volley after volley of weapons fire. The attack simply vanished against its shimmering defensive field, leaving the massive vessel untouched. Their shields cannot hold indefinitely, Carrick insisted, though doubt had crept into his voice. They aren't shields, Admiral, Hartman corrected. The technology operates on principles your science hasn't yet formalized. The attacks aren't being blocked or absorbed, they're being phase-shifted into an alternate dimensional pocket. Speaker Tal stepped down from his podium and approached Carrick directly. Though physically smaller and centuries older than the Admiral, his moral authority filled the space between them. You violated Council sovereignty, launched unauthorized military action, conspired to suppress historical truth. His voice carried throughout the now silent chamber. And for what purpose, Admiral? To preserve a convenient fiction, to maintain power, built on deliberate ignorance. Carrick's composure cracked. To protect us from them, Their technology, their numbers, they could dominate us at will. Yet they haven't, Tal observed quietly. Even now, under attack, they refuse to respond with violence. On the display, additional human vessels had appeared, smaller, sleeker craft that took positions around the Resolution. They formed a defensive perimeter, but launched no weapons, fired no energy beams. A final demonstration. Hartman announced and activated her communication device again. Resolution, execute Operation Enlightenment. The effect was immediate and astonishing. Across the Andrakar cluster, on every world and habitat, every communication device and public display activated simultaneously. The carefully manufactured historical narrative that had shaped Andrakarian identity for generations gave way to truth, unfiltered, unmanipulated evidence of human existence, and the deliberate conspiracy to erase it. In the council chamber, the displays showed crowds gathering in public spaces throughout the Federation, watching in stunned silence as their understanding of history transformed in real time. "What have you done?" Karek demanded. "Remove the filters," Hartman answered simply. "Your citizens now have access to both the official history they've been taught and the documented reality that was hidden from them. They can judge for themselves which narrative deserves their belief." Speaker Tal turned to address the council. "The evidence before us is clear. Admiral Karek and his faction have perpetuated a historical deception for purposes of power and control. Their actions represent the greatest betrayal of Federation principles in our history." He gestured to Federation security. "Place Admiral Karek under detention pending full investigation. All Special Division operations are suspended effective immediately." As guards moved to take Karek into custody, the Admiral's hand moved to his weapon. Captain Zul stepped forward swiftly, restraining him before he could draw. "Enough, Admiral. The truth has emerged. Accept it with dignity, if nothing else." In the days that followed, the Andrakar Federation experienced profound transformation. The evidence of deliberate historical manipulation sparked protests, debates, and soul-searching across all worlds. Academic institutions rushed to incorporate human history into their curricula. Cultural exchanges began tentative, but growing in confidence. A provisional government formed after numerous resignations and removals. Speaker Tal, respected for his moral clarity during the crisis, became interim Federation leader. Captain Vek of the Celestial Warden received commendation for her courage in exposing Karek's unauthorized attack. Arya found herself at the center of a whirlwind. Her expertise on human Andrakarian relations made her essential to the transition process. She divided her time between the archive, now dedicated to restoring accurate historical records, and diplomatic functions with the growing human delegation. 2 weeks after the council confrontation, Arya visited a small orbital platform that had belonged to her father, his private observatory and research station. Federation security had sealed it after his disappearance. Now, with her restored credentials and reputation, she entered the space that had remained frozen in time for a decade. His personal effects remained untouched: research materials, star charts, handwritten notes. Holographic images of a younger Arya adorned his workstation. She moved through the space with reverence, connecting with the father she had lost and the work that had cost him his life. In his private quarters, she found a hidden compartment behind a stellar map, exactly where her mother once said he kept his most important findings. Inside lay a data crystal and a handwritten note, "For Arya when the time comes." With trembling hands, she inserted the crystal into a reader. Her father's image appeared, a personal log entry, dated 3 days before his disappearance. "Arya, my brilliant daughter." He began, his familiar voice bringing tears to her eyes. "If you're viewing this, then either I've found the courage to share my discoveries with you, or circumstances have prevented me from doing so personally." He detailed his findings: fragments of human communications, anomalous energy signatures from the Helix Nebula, inconsistencies in Federation historical archives. Each piece, insignificant alone, but compelling together. I believe they're out there watching, waiting, he continued. Not myths, not legends, a living people erased from our consciousness. Tomorrow we investigate signals at the border that match predicted patterns. If I'm right, first contact may be imminent. His expression grew solemn. There are factions that prefer comfortable fiction to uncomfortable truth. My inquiries have drawn attention. If something happens to me, remember this truth cannot be permanently suppressed. It waits patient as stars for the right moment to shine. His final words struck her heart. If they remember us, we are never truly forgotten. If we remember them, we are never alone in the cosmos. Keep searching, my Arya. Keep believing. The recording ended. Arya sat in her father's chair, allowing grief and vindication to wash through her equally. He had been right all along. His work continued through her, had finally brought truth into the light. A gentle chime announced a visitor. Commander Hartman stood in the doorway, observing respectfully. Your staff said I might find you here. Is this a bad time? Arya shook her head, wiping tears. No, it's the perfect time, actually. My father would have wanted to meet you. From what I've learned of him, I would have been honored. Hartman entered, examining the observatory with appreciation. A dedicated scholar. The UNSF has declassified records of the encounter with the Horizon Seeker. Your father's vessel attempted peaceful communication before the Special Division ships arrived. Arya nodded, somehow comforted by this confirmation. What brings you here, Commander? Two matters. First, Speaker Tal has requested human participation in the new Historical Reconciliation Commission. He specifically asked for you to co-chair, alongside a human representative. And the second, Hartman smiled slightly. More personal. When you've concluded your current duties, Earth would welcome you as a cultural ambassador. Your unique perspective, bridging human understanding and Andrakarian experience, would be invaluable. Arya considered both offers. The commission work must come first. We need to establish foundations of shared truth before building new connections. Agreed, but the invitation remains open. Later that evening, Arya stood on the observation deck of her father's station, watching Andrakar Prime rotate slowly below. In orbit above the planet, human and Andrakarian vessels moved in coordinated patterns, joint exercises to establish protocols and build trust. The path ahead contained challenges. Centuries of separation had created profound differences in development culture and perspective. Some among both populations viewed the other with lingering suspicion. Rebuilding what had been deliberately destroyed would require patience and commitment. Yet the foundation was laid. Truth, however painful, had emerged. The conspiracy of forgetting had failed. Humans existed. Andrakarians acknowledged them. The universe was larger, more complex, and more wondrous than official histories had permitted. On her data tablet, Arya composed the introduction to what would become her most significant work, Remembering the Forgotten: A New History of Human Andrakarian Relations. She began with simple words. We return. 2 words that shattered centuries of manufactured mythology. 2 words that restored a people erased from our consciousness. 2 words that remind us of the most essential truth in cosmic coexistence. No civilization can build a lasting future upon deliberate forgetting of its past. She looked once more at the stars beyond the viewport, the same stars her father had studied believing when no one else would. The same stars that had witnessed the long separation and new reunion of 2 peoples who might together build something extraordinary. He was right, she whispered to the cosmos. If we remember them, we are never alone. Aboard a human vessel at the edge of the Andrakar cluster, a child stood at a viewport, watching the magnificent sprawl of Andrakarian space stations and habitats. Are those their warships? The child asked, pointing to angular vessels patrolling the border. Yes, answered a human officer standing nearby. And soon they'll be flying alongside ours. Weren't you scared when they shot at us? The officer smiled. Being prepared doesn't mean being afraid. Remember that, little one. As if on cue, A sleek Androcarian diplomatic vessel emerged from hyperspace, escorted by ships from both civilizations. Together, they moved toward the future, not as myths or monsters to each other, but as people with a shared sky and shared stories still being written.